Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about 30 romance books. So I saw this as a monthly challenge on Rate the Romance Instagram. I will have their Instagram linked down below if you want to check them out. They have a great Instagram feed devoted entirely to romance books, and it's really wonderful, so make sure that you check that out if you are on Instagram. Anyway, they had a monthly set of challenges that had like post this book every day for this romance prompt, and I just thought, wouldn't that be fun to just do a whole video of all of those prompts in one? So that's what we're gonna do. So I have 30 romance books here. I have read all of these. If I haven't, there might be one that I haven't read. Other than that, I've read all of them and loved them. So let's get into it. So the first question number one, is a book that you have read more than twice. Now, I used to be a huge rereader, and now, I guess within probably the last 2 or 3 years, I hardly ever reread. And if I do, it is usually this book. Well, actually, it was this book. This is the one book that I have reread in the last 2 years, and it is Twilight. I have read this book so many times, I can't even remember how many times I've read it. When it first came out, I instantly went and bought it, fell in love with it, waited in line for New Moon and Eclipse, just read the books as they came out. Like all of us, probably, I loved Twilight. It was my comfort read for many years. I read it over and over and over and over and over again, and I still love this book. I mean, so I just recently reread this in March, and I hadn't read it probably in at least 5 years, and it didn't quite hold up to the nostalgia that I have, the fond dream. I still really enjoy it, but looking back on it now, it doesn't hit me the same, you know, but I still really love it. And honestly, I probably always will. This book will always have a huge place in my heart. And yeah, I think we can all relate to Twilight. Okay, the next one is a book that made you cry, and for me that is definitely Eleanor and Gray by Brittany C. Cherry. To be quite honest, I probably cry through at some point in most of Brittany C. Cherry's books. They're very emotional, very hard-hitting. This one in particular is probably my favorite of hers, and this book, I'm gonna try and keep this video short, but this book is about Eleanor and Gray. They were childhood friends, had a little bit of a relationship, a little bit of a romance there as teenagers, and then many years down the road, after they both have had some loss and some really difficult times in their life, they meet up again, and it's just a really, really beautiful book, and I just loved it so much. And it made me cry for sure. And number 3 is your favorite romance in a big city, and for me this is definitely Roomies by Christina Lauren. I just love the rom-com feels of this book. I really, really love the couple in here. I thought this book was very funny, very cute, very sexy. I just think this is one of my favorite Christina Lauren. My stack of books just fell. This is one of my favorite Christina Laurens, and it probably always will be. I love the Manhattan Broadway vibes of this. Just a ton of fun. Oh, and the next one is a good question. This is the first romance author that you fell in love with. Well, I actually do have a video planned to talk about like how I started reading romance and things like that. The get to know the romance reader tag, so I will talk about that a little bit more, but basically the romance author that I first fell in love with was Nora Roberts. I discovered her books when I was 14. I was gifted one. I believe it was Montana Sky. I will try and find a picture and put it here on the screen. And I just was instantly captivated. And for like all throughout high school, I loved her books and read all of them that I could. I remember going to thrift stores and trying to track them down in all the different series, and I just love them. And I haven't read her in many years, but I really would like to, just because she was who started me in romance, and I just loved her books so much. And the next question is a romance book that you love that has a red cover. And this one for me is No Rest for the Wicked by Cressley Cole. This book follows Sebastian and, oh my gosh, what's her name? Caterine, I forgot. Sebastian and Caterine. Sebastian is one of my favorite heroes. This is a part of her Immortals After Dark series. I really love their romance, and I just really think they were a great match. And the next question, this is question number 6, a book with your favorite leading man. And I picked Devil from Wicked and the Wallflower by Sarah MacLean. I love Devil so much for how he supports Felicity, for how he gifts her with things that other people might think is kind of a weird thing that she likes. I love how he respects her agency and her choice, and I love how he loves her. He just honestly is one of my all-time favorite heroes, and he's just the perfect leading man. And the next question is a book that has a black or white cover, and I went with The Air He Breathes by Brittany C. Cherry. I really, really love this book. This whole series is just wonderful. I've talked about this series quite a lot on my channel. Oh, I love this book so much. It's one of my favorites in the series. And question number 8 is favorite single parent romance. And for me, I chose The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. So technically, this is more of a foster parent situation, but it is a single parent situation, and the love story in this is very, very sweet and very just tender, and I just love the family in this book. This is an LGBTQ book. I just absolutely adored this book. It was just wonderful. Question number 9 is a romance book that you didn't like that everyone else loved. And for me, don't hate me, okay? It is Bringing Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore. This I talked about in my most recent wrap-up. This was just a very disappointing read for me. I honestly don't dislike the book, but I had such high expectations for this, and I was really, really just used to a gold standard of book from other feminist historical romances that I read that this just sort of fell flat for me. So I feel like if I had read this without the hype, I may have liked it better. I may not have. I don't know. Anyway, this was it for me. Okay, and question number 10 is favorite book within your favorite trope. So this is one of my favorite tropes. There's a later question that talks about my very favorite trope, so I'm going to use this secondary trope that I still really like, and that is childhood sweethearts. I love a book with childhood sweethearts, and one of my favorites is The Fire Between High and Low by Brittany C. Cherry. Once again, part of her Element series. The relationship that they have as teenagers and childhood sweethearts in this book is so, so lovely and just emotional, and I just loved the way that they kind of saved each other and helped and supported each other through some kind of traumatic family situations. I just loved it so very much. And the next question is a romance that you love with an orange cover. This was kind of tricky because I don't know how many books that I have that are orange that are romances that I love, but I decided to go with White Hot Kiss by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is actually a YA book. This is her Dark Element series, and this is about sort of like demons and gargoyles, and I really, really love the love story in this. I just thought it was super, super great. There's a forbidden element to it. This does have a love triangle in this series, but still, I loved it. Okay, and the next question is, who is your favorite author to follow on Instagram or Twitter? I threw in Twitter on there because I think there are a lot of great romance authors on Twitter that I really love following their content. And I actually have 2. One of them is Sarah McLean, of course. I love everything that she posts. I think she has some really great posts that maybe are a little bit political or that are maybe about feminism and that are funny too. And I adore Sarah McLean. She's my favorite author of all time. And the other favorite that I have is Katie Roberts, just because I really like getting to see the insight into her thought process and how she talks about the books that she's writing and what may be coming up. I think she's really fun to follow on Twitter specifically. So those are the 2 authors that I really enjoy following. Okay, and the next question is a book that you love with a neurodiverse lead. And there were a few of these that I had, but I decided to go with The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie by Jennifer Ashley. This is still one of my favorite romances that I've read this year. I absolutely love, 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 love this romance in here. This follows Beth, I believe. Yeah, I remembered her name! So Beth is a widow, and Ian Mackenzie it's never on page, but it appears that he is on the autism spectrum somewhere. And he really has a lot of feelings for her, and she has a lot of freedom because she's a widow and she's sort of engaged to be married to this other man, and Ian knows the background of this other man, and he cannot bear the thought of Beth, who he is instantly taken with, to be married to this hateful man, so he strives to break them up and take her for himself, and I just loved it. Okay, the next question is a romance that you love that has a yellow cover. This one was a little bit easier. I absolutely had to choose The Highwayman by Kerrigan Byrne. I love Kerrigan Byrne's books. I love the way that she writes dark romance and longing and angst, and I love how she writes her heroes that are very broody and very just really love their women. I just love it so much. This book, man, I love this book so much. I love everything Kerrigan Byrne writes. I think she's fantastic. This book was just this was a complete winner for me, and definitely is my favorite yellow romance book. Question number 15, we're halfway there, is favorite romance nice guy. So I had a few of these that I could choose, but I went with my very favorite, and that is Red from Get a Life, Chloe Brown. He is such a soft, wonderful marshmallow hero, and we just love and adore everything that he is and everything that he stands for and how he treats Chloe, and he's just honestly my favorite nice guy marshmallow hero that I've ever read. I love him. Alright, question number 16 is a spicy romance cover. So I decided to go with a step back for this one because I love step backs, and this one is probably my all-time favorite step back, so that's why I'm sharing it, because there is so much chemistry between these two models, and I just love it so much. So, it's from this book, Elizabeth Hoyt, from her Maiden Lane series. I think the cover is really pretty too, because they're pretty people. And here is the step back, which I just love that. I love how he's holding her with one arm. I love the sparks in their gaze. Like, it's just wonderful. I love it. Okay, and the next one is a romance with poor reviews that you loved. So I went through my Goodreads and I looked through all of the books that I had rated either 4 or 5 stars, and I tried to find the one that had the lowest overall ratings, and that is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. I gave this a 4-star. I really actually liked this quite a lot. I wasn't necessarily as attached to her previous book, The Hating Game. I liked The Hating Game. I gave that one a 4-star too, but it definitely isn't one that I just absolutely loved like it is for so many people. I really, really liked it, but it wasn't necessarily an all-time favorite for me. So when this book came out, I went into this with pretty much no expectations, and I just really enjoyed the couple in here. I felt like I can't even remember their names. Darcy and Tom, I felt like they had a ton of chemistry. I loved that it was also another childhood sweethearts type of romance, and I really loved Tom. I thought he was a great hero. I just thought this was a ton of fun. Now, granted, I have read this probably 2 years ago, so I'm not sure how I feel about it now, but I really liked it when I first read it. I thought it was a fun, good read. Okay, this question, number 18, is the romance with your favorite female lead, and would I even be a McLean fan if I did not choose Hattie from Brazen and the Beast? Hattie is everything that I aspire to be. Honestly, she is my all-time favorite female character. I feel like there were several prompts in here that I could have chosen this book for. I also love the hero in here, Beast. He's one of my favorite heroes, Wit. His name is Wit, but they call him Beast. But Hattie is just so perfect. This whole book revolves around the year of the Hattie, where she is determined to go out and get the life that she wants, regardless of what society wants her to do. This is a wonderful book about fighting the patriarchy. I adore it. It's one of my all-time favorite books ever. Hattie is queen, and I just love her. Okay, and the next prompt is a romance that you love with a green cover. So for this one, I chose The Luckiest Lady in London by Sherry Thomas. I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it a 4 stars. It was really, really great. I love Sherry Thomas's writing. I'm really excited to read more from her. I know she has a lot of historical romances, and she also does sort of like a mystery with a little bit of romance too. So this is my green cover book. Okay, and the next prompt is your favorite romance with a POC lead. So for that, I chose Forbidden by Beverly Jenkins. I love this book so much. Eddie, the female lead in here, is one of my favorite female characters. If I didn't love Hattie so much, Eddie would be right up there with her. She's very strong, but also very sensitive and very compassionate. And she has this really wonderful quality about her that I love and admire so much, where it doesn't matter what life throws at her, she just stands back up and she keeps going. And she doesn't like throw a fit. She doesn't think the world is ending. She's one of the most steadfast and strong female characters who is determined to get the life that she wants, and I just love her so much. Alright, and this question I changed a little bit. It was supposed to be your favorite romance that you've read this year, but I'm saving all of those favorites of the years for my end of the year videos, which will be starting in December. So for this prompt, I decided to change it to the best romance that was released this year. And that has to be, for me, Daring and the Duke by Sarah McLean. I love this book. I love this entire series. I love the sort of modern contemporary feel that these books have while still being in a historical setting. And I also in particularly love Grace in this series because she is just such a strong, again, just a strong female character, but also she has a lot of softness and still that looking for love and trying to manage her life in a time when women had very, very few options for, the choices that they could make, very little agency over their own life. Grace breaks free of all of that time and societal constraints and forges a life that she is happy with. And oh yeah, and I love Grace. I love Grace, obviously. But then the romance in here is something that I was really worried I wouldn't like because it's with the villain from the previous two books. But that almost made me love it even more. Reading about his story and seeing his redemption come about just was wonderful. So, favorite romance of this year. Favorite romance that was released this year. Alright, and the next prompt is favorite sports romance. So, I don't think this will surprise anybody. I chose Culty by Mariana Zapata. I love sports romances when they focus also on the female's role in sports. I love sports romances, but I want them to be about the woman. Girls like sports too, I love that we got to see the athletic side of Saul in this, so this is my favorite sports romance. And the next prompt is a romance you love with a blue cover, and for me, I chose Mine Till Midnight by Lisa Kleypas. This is one of my favorite Lisa Kleypas books. I love, love, love the hero in here, Cam. I love this whole story. It's also a little bit mysterious, a little bit magical. This is just a fantastic romance. He is so smitten with Amelia and just really tries to win her in this book, and I loved it very much. Question number 24 is a book that you often recommend, and this is probably my most often recommended book when anyone asks me about starting historical romance especially, and that is The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. I feel like this is the perfect book to start any historical romance reading journey. If you're looking for a place to start with historicals, pick this one up. It has a contemporary feel. It has a really strong, female lead. There isn't the issues that a lot of the older historicals will have where they're kind of full of a little bit misogyny and consent. That's not an issue here. We have a wonderful, grumpy, scarred hero. Their relationship is just spark-filled and wonderful. This is just a perfect beginner historical romance book. And the next question, number 25, is a book that you love with a super smart heroine, and how could I choose anything other than One Good Earl Deserves a Lover by Sarah McLean, with the wonderful Pippa, who the whole book, it centers around her love of knowledge and really, really being smart and prizing her intelligence, and I just adore Pippa. She is the smart girl that we all need in our life, the smart girl representation. I love her so much. And question 26 is a romance that you love with a purple cover, and I chose The Rakes by Scarlett Peckham. This has purple in it. I love this book so much. I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to how I feel about this book. This has a very emotional, sort of almost angst-filled romance in here, while dealing with those social issues of feminism and the society constraints of women at the time, and really women seeking their own agency and lifestyle for the way that they want their life to be instead of what the patriarchy puts them in. I love this book so much. Scarlett Peckham is one of my favorite authors. This is definitely a must-read. If you like those type of things that I'm talking about, pick this one up for sure. The next question is favorite enemies to lovers romance, and I just did a whole video. I'm not sure if I posted it or this one first, but I have a whole video about some of my favorite enemies to lovers books that I've read this year, so this book was on that list, and it is my favorite one of the year, and that is Baron by Joanna Shupe. I love their romance in here. It's very angsty, very much fighting their passions, and it's just a great time. And the next question, number 28, is a romance that you were surprised that you loved. And for me, that would be Lies and Lullabies by Serena Bowen. I really was unprepared for how much I was going to love this book. This book was just so sweet and just tender and emotional, but not in like a real sad way, just in a really hopeful and happy way. But it's also a rock star romance, and I typically don't love those, to be honest. I don't ever really go out of my way to find rock star romances. I just sort of feel like I'm over that, you know, but I really, and it also has a secret baby trope, and I was a little nervous about that, but I just felt like this book was just so sweet and happy and hopeful. I just really, really loved it. So that is the book that surprised me that I loved so much. Question number 29 is a romance that you love with a pink cover. I chose Amor Amor by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I love this book. This is all about two people who meet in like a Cirque du Soleil type of setting in Las Vegas. There's definitely a hate to love in this romance too. I kind of forgot about that, where we have the Russian male hero who is sort of like this really super extremely talented star of the show in the circus, and then I think it is Thora who comes in and is really wanting to audition and try out for that part, and he agrees to like coach her and help her try and make it into the show, and it's just really delightful. I love this book. And the last question is, what is your favorite romance of all time? Could they have given us a harder question? I feel like this one is always changing. Like, I am always gonna love Twilight, the love story in there. That's just a given. Definitely nostalgia comes into play in there, but I still, like, that was one of those books that sort of set me off on really trying to find and discover what I liked in romance, and feeling like it was okay to read romance. And I also will always have really like strong feelings about Nora Roberts books. I can't pinpoint which one of those was my favorite. And there were a lot of books that I've read this year that are definitely going to be up there for my favorite romances of all time, that really just challenged the way that I think and what I want in romance books. But if I had to pick one book to represent my favorite romance of all time, it would have to be Pride and Prejudice. This book is just the epitome of an enemies to lovers romance. There's so much longing in there. There's just, even if we say like all of the variations of how this has been made into film, like the 2005 movie Pride and Prejudice is going to always be one of my favorite movies of all time. I just feel like their love story is just so classic and so perfect and so relatable, and it's just my favorite. So I could not choose anything other than Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen as my all-time favorite romance, because it is true. That is what it is. Alright, I hope this list was fun. I hope that you enjoyed some of these questions, and maybe it got you thinking about what some of your favorite books are for these prompts. I would love to know if you have any that you agree with, or maybe that you disagree with, down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.